It's really troubling. Michael, you know how important Australia's trade relationship is with China, but so too, indeed more important, is Australia's sovereignty. How do we reconcile these two considerations given that they so often seem to come into conflict?
Well, we've shown the way. We keep our nerve. We don't compromise on the 14 demands that the authorities in Beijing demanded of us to change our democratic system. And we seek alternatives to our coal, wine, barley and lobster exports, and they're growing great guns. I must say it's good to see cheaper lobsters in the South Melbourne market, but the main point is we can diversify. We shouldn't hedge on our democratic values, and we've shown that it can work. Now Beijing is coming to us. And good luck to Don Farrell negotiating further with them, but we haven't compromised and they're starting to buy our coal. So Australia's shown the world the way with facing down China.
Yeah, good point, Michael. And the good work that was done during the coalition years to diversify those markets is something that, if anyone in Labor can do it, I think Don Farrell's probably the guy. Malcolm, there are cultural differences between the way that the Chinese see the world, a really long view spanning generations, while here we seem so often locked into a short-term policy perspective that so often has an eye to the 3 years between elections. How can we ensure that Australian security and supply chain resilience is there when there seems to be a lack of that long-sightedness?
Look, I think the short-term perspective on this occasion is a good thing because the threats that we're facing are short-term threats. We're not talking about something that's going to happen to us in 20 or 30 years' time. We're talking about the potential for war occurring potentially between China and the United States over Taiwan in the second half of this decade. So we do need to be thinking short-term in some respects in terms of defence and national security. We can't afford to basically take our eye off the situation in regards to Taiwan. But at the same time, we do need to recognise that, as you say, China has a long-term strategy. Their goal is to reassert themselves as the new Middle Kingdom for the 21st century, to impose a Chinese-led sphere of influence on the Indo-Pacific and to exclude the United States. And in that future, it would be very dark indeed for Australia. Your other guest talked about the list of 14 demands. Well, that list would be the first of many such lists if China were to succeed in controlling and dominating the Indo-Pacific. So we do need to think both short-term in terms of the national and security and defence risks, and long-term in terms of the strategic and geopolitical challenges.
Yeah, well said, although I think in Australia to have a 10-year view would be actually an improvement. Sometimes I think the Australian short-sightedness is in 2 or 3 year cycles. Michael, Adam Crichton has written a piece in this weekend's Australian about the difficulties that the Five Eyes nations will face in keeping its edge in the security and defence space. What do you think is necessary for Australia to stay ahead of the game in this space so that it doesn't invite espionage, the exploitation of technology or other aggression that seems to come with the smell of weakness?
Well, I think we have to do what Richard Marles has done this week in response to James Patterson, act in a non-partisan way. With Chinese technologies that were intruded into Australia in an earlier naive period, we have to get rid of them. And we have to continue this fantastic cooperation that started between Japan, the United States, India and us in cyber, in defence cooperation, in advanced technologies. I'm sorry to say it, but the old formulation with the Americans, whatever we think of Biden or a Republican president, cling close to the American skirts. They've got the most advanced technology. We've seen it with semiconductors. The Chinese are now falling behind them because they've banned the export of advanced American semiconductors. That's what we have to do. Keep doing what we're doing. And this defence review had better get things right this February with the acquiring of new advanced weapons and technologies that will enable us to stand off any future military threat from China.
Thank you, Malcolm Davis and Michael Danby. I really appreciate your expertise.